The flames rose higher than my barn that night, lighting up the whole field like the 4th of July. My corn harvest, months of sweat and care, turned to ashes in front of my eyes. I stood frozen, watching the inferno eat everything I'd worked for. Then I saw her, Karen, the HOA president, standing across the fence with a smug grin, holding a lighter. She thought she could scare me into selling my land so her community expansion project could move forward. But she didn't realize the county fire department had cameras installed on the access road, and every move she made was caught in full view. When the firefighters traced the blaze back to her house, the look on her face was priceless. That night, she didn't just burn my crop, she ignited her own downfall, and I made sure the whole town saw the truth. For 15 peaceful years, my farm had been my world. The rolling acres of golden corn, the sound of wind whistling through the stalks, and the rhythm of early mornings and long sunsets. All of it gave me a kind of quiet happiness that city people would never understand. My farm wasn't fancy, but it was honest work. The barn stood weathered but strong, my dogs roamed freely, and my tractors carried the marks of seasons past. I had neighbors before, sure, but they were farmers like me, simple folks who waved when they passed and lent a hand when storms hit. Everything changed when the new subdivision showed up across the fence. At first, I didn't mind. The developers came in with big promises of modern community living, bright homes, paved roads, and fancy streetlights. They called it Lakeside Meadows, even though there wasn't a single lake in sight. Soon after, shiny SUVs and brand new mailboxes started appearing where wheat once grew. I thought I could coexist with them. I really did. But that was before she moved in. Karen introduced herself one sunny afternoon, right after the builders finished the last few houses near my property line. She wore a wide-brimmed hat, a pink blazer that didn't belong anywhere near dirt, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hello there," she said, extending her manicured hand like she was running for office. "I'm Karen, president of the HOA. I remember wiping the grease off my hands before shaking hers. "President of what?" I asked, half joking. "The Homeowners Association," she replied, with a hint of pride. "We keep the community beautiful and orderly. I hope you don't mind a few friendly rules." "Rules?" I chuckled, thinking she was teasing. "Lady, I've got corn taller than your house. What kind of rules could possibly apply to me?" She laughed, but I could tell she didn't appreciate my humor. "Oh, you'd be surprised," she said before walking away, heels clicking on my gravel driveway. That was the moment I knew this woman and I were not going to get along. The first few weeks were peaceful enough, though I noticed her eyes on me often. She'd stand at her fence line, hands on her hips, watching me work. If my tractor was running early, she'd glare. If I burned old wood scraps, she'd cough dramatically. One day she even walked right up and told me, "You know, that smell from your fertilizer isn't exactly pleasant for the neighborhood." I laughed and told her, "That smell is called hard work. You might want to get used to it." That didn't sit well with her. From that day on, the letters started arriving. At first, they were folded neatly in my mailbox, official-looking papers with HOA notice printed on top. The first one said my barn was an eyesore and needed to be repainted to match community standards. The second claimed my tractor was unauthorized, equipment left in public view. I didn't even live inside their neighborhood boundaries. My land existed outside the HOA's jurisdiction entirely, but that didn't stop Karen from trying to play sheriff of the county. Every week brought a new complaint. "Your dog barked too long after sunset. Your fence isn't regulation height. Your crops attract too many bugs." It was ridiculous. Most of the time, I'd just crumple the letters and toss them into the fireplace. But then she started showing up in person, always uninvited, always pretending to be polite while pushing her agenda. One afternoon, I was fixing the irrigation line near the fence when she appeared again, holding a clipboard. "We've discussed it with the board," she said. "We'd like to make you an offer for your land." "Not for sale," I said flatly, tightening a pipe wrench without looking up. "You might want to reconsider," she pressed on. "Lakeside Meadows is expanding. We plan to turn your field into a family park, picnic areas, walking paths, playgrounds. It'll raise property values for everyone. You could move somewhere quieter than this." I laughed. "Ma'am, this land's been in my family since before your HOA even existed. I'm not moving for a playground." Her smile stiffened. "Well, that's unfortunate," she said, stepping closer. "Because the board believes your farm isn't exactly compatible with our community's image, we'll have to take certain steps." "Steps?" I looked up. "You go ahead and take all the steps you want on your side of the fence." She left without another word. But the next week, a county inspector showed up, citing me for zoning violations, then another for unauthorized animal housing. It was clear Karen had friends in the right offices, and she wasn't afraid to use them. I appealed the fines and won most of them easily, but the damage was done. She'd turned half the neighborhood against me. Parents didn't want their kids playing near my property. Some of them even called it the eyesore farm, all because of her gossip. Still, I kept my head down. It was harvest season soon, and I had work to do. The corn had grown beautifully that year, tall, golden, and healthy. Every morning I'd walk through the rows, brushing my hands along the stalks, proud of what I'd built. It reminded me of my father and all the years we'd worked together under this same sun. But as the days went by, I noticed something odd. Karen was spending more time outside, especially near the fence. Sometimes she'd be on her phone, pointing toward my field. Other times, she'd have landscapers cutting down trees right along the property line. One evening, I caught her taking pictures of my grain silo from across the fence. Pretending to admire the sunset, I didn't say anything, not yet. But something about her behavior set off alarms in my head. It wasn't just annoyance anymore. It was obsession. She didn't just want me gone. She needed me gone. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the cornfield in deep orange light, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was coming. I looked out over my land, my home, and whispered to myself, "You picked the wrong farmer to mess with, Karen." At the time, I didn't know how right I was. The air was still that Friday night, the kind of calm that comes before the storm. I'd just finished a long day of harvesting, my body aching but my mind at peace. The cornfield looked beautiful under the moonlight, tall, golden, waving gently in the night breeze. I leaned against my tractor, sipping coffee from an old thermos, feeling proud of what I'd grown. After everything Karen had tried to pull over the past months, my harvest was proof that I wouldn't be pushed out, so I'd outlasted her letters, her inspectors, her threats. Or so I thought. Around 10 o'clock, I was in the barn, tightening a few bolts on the cultivator, when I caught a faint glow outside. At first, I thought it was a neighbor's porch light reflecting off the dew, but then came the smell, sharp, bitter, unmistakable. Smoke. My stomach sank. I dropped my wrench, ran out the door, and looked toward the eastern edge of the field. Flames. They started small, flickering like a candle, but within seconds they grew long orange tongues licking up the dry stalks. My cornfield was on fire. I sprinted toward it, shouting for my dogs to stay back. The wind, which had been calm all evening, suddenly kicked up like a cruel joke, pushing the fire deeper into the field. The sound was deafening, the crackling of dry corn, the hiss of heat, the whoosh as rows of plants ignited in rapid waves. I grabbed the hose near the barn and dragged it as far as it would stretch, but the field was too vast. My small stream of water might as well have been spit against a bonfire. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911, yelling over the roar. "This is Jacob Miller, out on County Road 16. My field's on fire. Half an acre already gone. You need to hurry." The dispatcher's voice was calm but urgent. "We've got units on the way. Stay clear of the flames, sir. Don't try to fight it yourself." Too late for that, I thought, as sparks flew past my face. I coughed hard, covering my mouth with my sleeve. The fire was spreading fast, too fast to be natural. I'd seen small brush fires before, usually caused by lightning or careless campers, but this one had started in a perfect line right along the fence, the same fence that bordered Karen's property. That thought hit me like a punch to the gut. My eyes darted toward her house, and there she was, standing by her garden hose, wearing slippers and a robe, pretending to spray water on her roses. At first I thought maybe she was just trying to help, but then she looked up. Our eyes met across the orange-lit night. Her face didn't show concern or fear. It showed satisfaction. A faint, smug smile flickered before she turned away. "Unbelievable," I muttered, fury mixing with panic. She'd actually done it. The wail of sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Fire trucks rolled up the gravel road, red lights flashing against the smoke. Firefighters jumped out and ran toward the blaze, unrolling hoses, barking commands, setting up barriers. One of them, a younger guy I knew named Lucas, shouted, "Jacob, get back behind the line. We'll handle it." I stepped back reluctantly, chest heaving. "It started right by the fence," I yelled. "Check over by the east side, someone poured something out there." Lucas gave a quick nod before sprinting toward the flames. I watched helplessly as they fought to contain the inferno. It took nearly an hour before the fire stopped advancing. When the last flames died, only blackened earth and twisted stalks remained. My beautiful cornfield, the pride of my season, was half gone. The fire marshal arrived soon after, clipboard in hand. He introduced himself as Dan Rivers, a tall man with sharp eyes and a calm, steady voice. "Mr. Miller, I'm going to need you to walk me through what happened tonight," he said. I told him everything, the time I saw the glow, where it started, and the direction of the wind. I mentioned the fence line, and how it looked like someone had set it deliberately. He nodded, jotting down notes. "You're not the first to mention suspicious activity in this area," he said quietly. "We've had reports of property disputes near these new developments." My jaw tightened. "You mean the H?" He gave me a knowing look. "Something like that. We'll be checking footage from the new wildfire monitoring cameras we installed last month on County Road 16. If someone lit that fire, we'll find out." The firefighters packed up, and the trucks pulled away one by one, leaving behind a haunting silence. The smell of burnt corn hung heavy in the air. The field that had once been alive now looked like a wasteland, rows of charred stalks stretching as far as I could see. I stood there until the last truck left, my boots sinking into the soft ash across the fence. Karen's house was dark now. No lights, no movement. But I could still feel her eyes on me, hidden behind those thick curtains. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my head, the flames, her smirk, the sound of crackling destruction. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing there, calm as the world burned. By morning, exhaustion gave way to anger. This wasn't just about money or land anymore. This was personal. She wanted to destroy what I loved most, and she'd nearly succeeded. The next day, I walked the field with the fire marshal again. He pointed 2 spots on the ground, tiny black circles that reeked of gasoline. Accelerant, he said. Someone poured it in a line. Definitely intentional. I clenched my fists. You'll catch whoever did this. He gave a reassuring nod. If she's on those cameras, we'll know soon enough. Later that evening, I caught sight of Karen again, standing in her driveway talking to a neighbor. When she noticed me watching, she waved, all friendly and fake, as if nothing had happened. My jaw tightened, and I turned away, but deep down I knew she was nervous. She thought she'd gotten away with it. What she didn't know was that the fire department's cameras had recorded everything, every move, every flick of her lighter. She'd tried to burn me out. Instead, she'd just lit the match that would expose her for good. The sun rose pale and heavy over the smoldering ruins of my cornfield. The smoke had thinned overnight, leaving behind the scent of ash and wet soil. My boots crunched over blackened stalks as I walked through what was left of my harvest. The field, once golden and alive, now looked like the aftermath of a war. The fire hadn't just burned crops, it had scorched memories. Every step reminded me of the countless mornings I'd spent here. From planting seeds to watching the first sprouts push through the dirt. Now, everything was gone. But grief wasn't what kept me awake that night. It was rage. Not wild, shouting rage. No, this was colder. Controlled, because deep down, I knew exactly who had done this. Karen. She'd stood by her fence that night pretending to water her flowers while my field went up in flames. I'd seen her smirk in the orange glow, the same smirk she wore every time she sent another notice my way. But suspicion wasn't proof, and without proof, she'd keep hiding behind her perfect smile and her HOA title. When Fire Marshal Don Rivers arrived early that morning, clipboard in hand, I was waiting for him by the edge of the property. "Morning, Mr. Miller," he greeted, his voice steady but concerned. "I've been reviewing the scene since dawn. I can tell you one thing for certain, this was no accident." I nodded grimly. "You found He crouched and pointed to a dark trail along the ground near the fence line. "Gasoline? Whoever did this poured a line right along the property edge and lit it from the far corner. Fire spread inward with the wind. They knew what they were doing. Any chance your cameras caught it?" I asked, trying to hide the hope in my voice. He stood, tapping his pen against his clipboard. "We installed 2 new wildfire cameras along County Road 16. They cover a pretty wide area, including this section of your fence. I've already asked our tech guy to pull the footage from that night. Should have something by tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word gave me both relief and impatience. I wanted answers now, but I knew waiting was the only way. I thanked him and watched as he and his crew packed up, their tire tracks carving through the ashes. That afternoon, I noticed Karen outside again. She was pruning her bushes, humming loudly, pretending as if the entire countryside had nearly gone up in smoke. When I walked to the fence, she glanced over and smiled sweetly. "Such a terrible thing, that fire," she said. "I told everyone we should have enforced better safety standards. Maybe now you'll consider moving somewhere less flammable." My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. "You sure had a front row seat last night," I said evenly. "Hope the view was worth it." Her expression faltered for just a second before she forced another smile. "I have cameras on my property, Jacob. I record everything. You should be careful what you imply." "Oh, don't worry," I said, leaning against the fence. "You're not the only one with cameras." Her smirk faded. She turned quickly and went back to her roses, but I could see the stiffness in her shoulders. For the first time, she looked unsure. That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jolt, the rustle of leaves, the creak of the barn door, even the faint hoot of an owl. My mind replayed the scene of her standing in that same spot with the flames behind her. She thought she'd covered her tracks, but she was about to find out otherwise. The next morning, my phone rang before sunrise. It was Marshal Rivers. "Mr. Miller," he said, his tone different now, sharper, more certain. "You might want to come down to the station. We've got something you'll want to see." My heart pounded the whole drive into town. When I got there, Rivers met me at the door with a small grin. "Follow me," he said, leading me to a dimly lit office where a computer monitor displayed still frames of nighttime footage. The first image showed the road outside my property, empty. The second showed a figure stepping out of a driveway. Karen's driveway. My breath caught. She was wearing a long robe and slippers, holding a red gas can in one hand and something small in the other, probably a lighter. Rivers hit play. The footage showed her walking quietly along the fence, glancing back toward her house every few seconds. Then, she crouched, poured something along the base of the fence, and flicked her wrist. In an instant, the line erupted into flame. She jumped back, staring for a moment, then ran home. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m. I exhaled slowly, feeling both fury and relief wash over me. "You got her?" I whispered. Rivers nodded. "Crystal clear. The sheriff's already seen it. We'll be filing charges for arson and property destruction by tonight." I couldn't help but smile, though it wasn't a happy smile. Guess karma works faster with a camera, he chuckled. Sometimes, yeah. You'd be surprised how often pride gets people caught. When I drove back home, the morning light glowed faintly on the charred field. But for the first time since the fire, I didn't just see loss. I saw justice waiting to happen. I parked by the barn and leaned against my truck, staring toward Karen's house. She was outside again, this time watering her front lawn as if nothing was wrong. She spotted me and hesitated. I gave her a small wave. Slow, deliberate. Her smile didn't return this time. Maybe she knew. Maybe the guilt was starting to eat at her already. That afternoon, the sheriff's cruiser rolled through the neighborhood. I watched from my porch as he stopped at her house. 2 officers stepped out, knocked on her door, and talked for a while. Though I couldn't hear the conversation, I saw her body stiffen, her hands waving defensively. Then the sheriff handed her a folded piece of paper. A summons. She turned, looking straight toward my farm across the fence. Our eyes met for one last long second. All the smugness, all the control, gone. For the first time, Karen looked small. I didn't smile. I just turned and walked back into my house. The fight wasn't over yet, but the tide had finally turned. She'd tried to burn me down, but all she'd done was light the trail that led right back to her doorstep, and deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of her reckoning. The day Karen's reckoning came started like any other, quiet, humid, with the smell of rain somewhere in the distance. I woke before sunrise, same as always, but instead of heading straight to the barn, I brewed an extra strong pot of coffee and sat by the window. My cornfield was still a blackened scar across the landscape, but something about that morning felt different. The air carried a strange stillness, like the world was holding its breath. I had been waiting for this day, not out of vengeance, but for justice. And justice, I knew, was on its way. By late morning, a county sheriff's cruiser rolled slowly down the gravel road. 2 more vehicles followed, one from the fire marshal's office, the other marked county investigations. I stepped out onto my porch, hands in my pockets, watching as they parked in front of Karen's house. She was outside already, pruning those same rose bushes she always fussed over, dressed in her perfect pastel outfit, pretending that her world hadn't just caught fire, literally and legally. The officers got out, calm and professional, though the seriousness on their faces said plenty. The sheriff, an older man named Whitaker, adjusted his hat and approached her yard. Mrs. Daniels, he called out Karen's full name. We need a few minutes of your time. Karen looked up, visibly annoyed. Sheriff, I've already told everyone I had nothing to do with that fire. I was asleep when it happened. This is harassment. Whitaker didn't flinch. Ma'am, we have surveillance footage that says otherwise. We just need you to come down to the station with us. Her hands froze mid-footage, she repeated, voice trembling slightly. That's impossible. Behind him, Fire Marshal Rivers stepped forward holding a small tablet. We've got video evidence from the wildfire monitoring cameras. It shows someone leaving your property with a gas can and a lighter at 11:42 p.m. The ignition point matches where the fire began. That someone appears to be you. I was standing by the fence line now, watching from a distance. Karen turned her head and spotted me, her face twisted, first with shock, then anger. You, she shouted, pointing across the yard. You set me up. You've been trying to ruin me from the start. I crossed my arms and stayed quiet. No need to say anything. The truth was louder than her voice could ever be. The sheriff's patience was running thin. Ma'am, you can explain yourself downtown, he said firmly. You're under arrest for arson, destruction of private property, and endangering public safety. When the handcuffs came out, her composure finally cracked. No, you can't do this, she shrieked, stepping back. Do you have any idea who I am? I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. Whitaker sighed, like a man who'd heard that line too many times. Ma'am, you can tell that to the judge. The neighbors started to gather, drawn out by the flashing lights and raised voices. One by one, doors opened. People peeked from their porches, couples in golf shirts, kids on bicycles, retirees in lawn chairs. The same people who used to whisper about my eyesore farm were now watching their queen be meltdown in public. Karen's husband, Greg, came running out in slippers and a robe, confusion written all over his face. What's going on? He asked, looking from the officers to his wife. They're arresting me? She screamed, twisting in the deputy's grip. Jacob's behind this. He's lying. He's always hated me. Greg looked lost. Honey, just calm down. Don't tell me to calm down, she snapped, her voice cracking. Do something. But there was nothing he could do. The sheriff read her rights as she struggled, tears streaking down her face. For all her arrogance and control, she suddenly looked fragile, a woman stripped of her power. When they finally led her toward the cruiser, she spotted me again. You'll regret this, she shouted. You think you've won, but people like you always lose. I didn't respond. I just looked at her, silent, as the car door closed and the sirens started. The cruiser pulled away slowly, leaving the neighborhood in stunned silence. For the first time in months, I felt my chest loosen, not with joy, but with relief. After the vehicles left, the neighbors began murmuring among themselves. Some shook their heads. Others whispered. I could hear snippets. I can't believe it. She really did it. That poor man's field? Suddenly, the same folks who once treated me like a nuisance were offering sympathetic glances. A few even walked over. One woman, Mrs. Green from 3 houses down, approached me with an apologetic smile. Mr. Miller, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. We didn't realize what she was doing to you. I nodded, not unkindly. It's all right, ma'am. Sometimes folks don't see the fire until it's burning their own porch. Her eyes widened slightly at that. Then she gave a quiet nod and walked away. Over the next few hours, the neighborhood buzzed like a kicked beehive. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. Fitting, I thought. By evening, word had reached the entire county. The president of Lakeside Meadows HOA was in jail for arson. That night, I stood by my porch again, looking out over the dark field. The fire had taken my crops, but not my spirit. In a strange way, the flames had burned away more than corn. They'd exposed the rot hiding behind manicured lawns and perfect smiles. A light flicked on across the street, Greg's house. He was standing at the window, staring out toward my property. I almost felt sorry for him. He hadn't lit the match, but he'd lived under the same roof as the woman who did. I gave him a small nod before heading back inside. Later that night, I got a call from Marshall Rivers. Thought you'd want to know, he said. She confessed halfway through the interview. Said she just wanted to teach you a lesson. I exhaled slowly. Guess she taught herself one instead. He chuckled softly. Seems that way. Good news is, with the insurance and her liability, you'll be fully compensated for your losses. You'll be back on your feet before long. Appreciate it, Dan, I said. And thank you for not letting this get buried. Don't thank me, he replied. Thank the cameras. The truth doesn't burn as easily as corn. When I hung up, I sat in silence for a while, letting his words sink in. Outside, crickets chirped, and the night finally felt peaceful again. I looked toward the charred field one last time before heading to bed. Justice had finally come full circle. The woman who tried to burn me out of my home was now facing the fire herself. And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized sometimes the flames we set for others are the ones that end up lighting our own doorstep. By the time the smoke cleared and the ashes cooled, the once golden cornfields of Green Valley stood in silence. The smell of burnt soil lingered in the air, a reminder of what had been lost. I stood at the edge of the charred field with my arms folded, watching the firefighters pack up their hoses. They'd done their job, but the damage was beyond repair. My year's work, every seed, every harvest plan had been reduced to nothing but black earth. Yet deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the start of something Karen never saw coming. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. The fire marshal confirmed what I had already suspected: accelerants had been used. It wasn't a natural blaze, nor an accident. The fire had been started deliberately. I stayed quiet as the officers explained their findings, letting them put the pieces together. And when the name Karen Brooks appeared on the preliminary report as a potential suspect, I simply nodded. The HOA queen herself had gone too far this time. She wanted to destroy my land, but she'd destroyed her reputation instead. 2 days later, the police arrived at her doorstep with a warrant. The whole neighborhood gathered to watch, whispering and peeking through curtains as Karen's confident smile turned into a look of horror. She tried to argue, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that she'd been framed, but her arrogance cracked when they found the half-empty canister of gasoline behind her shed. Her fingerprints matched the evidence found near the fence line bordering my property. There was no escape from this. The woman who had spent years enforcing HOA rules on others was now being read her rights in front of her manicured lawn as they placed her in the back of the police car. I stood by the mailbox.com and silent. Our eyes met for a second. I expected anger, but what I saw was fear. Real, cold fear. Maybe she had thought she could intimidate me, or that the fire would only scare me into selling my land. She'd never imagined she'd face criminal charges. The crowd murmured, neighbors exchanging uneasy glances. No one defended her, not this time. She had crossed the line too many times before. But setting a fire endangering lives was the final straw. That night, the valley was quiet again. For the first time in weeks, I slept without worry. The next morning, I awoke to sunlight cutting through the window and the sound of distant tractors. A few of my neighbors, the good ones, had gathered by the fence line. They'd brought tools, seeds, and encouragement. "We'll help you replant," said Mr. Sanders, a retired farmer from down the road. "The ground can heal faster than you think." I nodded, grateful. It wasn't just about rebuilding crops, it was about restoring peace. As we worked together, I noticed something had changed. People who used to avoid my property, fearing HOA complaints, now walked freely onto the land. Kids ran around laughing, helping collect debris. Even the sheriff stopped by to offer a hand, saying, "You stood up to her, and now everyone else can breathe a little easier." His words hit hard. Karen had controlled the neighborhood for years with her fake authority and endless fines. But now, her empire was gone. Weeks passed, and the soil began to turn green again. I replaced the burnt fences, repainted the barn, and installed new irrigation lines. The smell of smoke was gone, replaced by fresh earth and hope. Meanwhile, The court case against Karen gained attention in local news. Reporters called it the HOA fire scandal, and the story spread quickly. They called her the neighborhood tyrant who went too far. Every time her name came up, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of sadness and justice. She had destroyed herself, all because of pride. During her trial, Karen tried to cry her way through testimony, claiming it was an accident that she had only tried to burn weeds near the property line. But the evidence was overwhelming. Security camera footage from a nearby road caught her car heading toward my field that night. Her phone location confirmed it. The jury didn't take long to decide. Guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, I didn't cheer or celebrate. I just stood up and quietly left the courtroom. Justice didn't need applause. It just needed to be done. Months later, the harvest returned. Not as big as before, but strong and healthy. The corn swayed in the wind like waves of gold, and the sunset cast a warm glow over the valley. I leaned against the fence post, breathing in the scent of life coming back to where death had once spread. There was peace now. Karen's old house had been sold to a young couple who wanted nothing to do with HOA nonsense. The new community was different, more open, kinder, and free from the fear of petty rules. One evening, as I watched the fields shimmer under the setting sun, Mr. Sanders joined me again. "You know," he said, "sometimes fire doesn't just destroy it, burns away the bad so new things can grow." I smiled at that. He was right. The fire had taken my crops, but it had also burned down something far more poisonous: the hold Karen had on everyone around her. I decided to name the first new section of Corn Phoenix Rose, a reminder that even from ashes, life can rise stronger. And every time the wind rustled through those stalks, it sounded like freedom, soft, endless, an unbroken dot. As I walked back toward the farmhouse that night, I looked over my shoulder one last time at the horizon glowing orange with sunset. This time, the fire wasn't one of destruction, it was light, warmth, and rebirth. I whispered quietly, "You tried to burn my land, Karen, but all you did was help me rebuild it better." And with that, I closed the gate behind me, leaving the past and the ashes where it belonged. Asterisk. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts below. Subscribe to HOA Bright Reality for more shocking real-life HOA revenge stories every day.